In 2013, one man revealed that governments were watching everything: your emails, your calls, your internet history. He exposed the largest surveillance operation in history. Then he fled. Edward Snowden. Hero or traitor? You decide. June 2013. Newspapers around the world published explosive revelations. The United States government was collecting phone records of millions of Americans. Intelligence agencies were monitoring internet communications globally. Secret programs tracked everything from emails to web searches. The source? A 29-year-old intelligence contractor named Edward Snowden, who had fled to Hong Kong with thousands of classified documents. Snowden's disclosures triggered a global debate about privacy, security, and government power that continues today. They sparked diplomatic incidents, changed laws, and forced tech companies to strengthen encryption. But they also revealed classified intelligence programs, potentially compromised national security operations, and led to accusations of treason. More than a decade later, Snowden remains in exile in Russia, unable to return to the United States without facing prosecution. Some call him a whistleblower and privacy advocate. Others call him a traitor who damaged national security. Today, we're examining the complete story: who Edward Snowden is, what he revealed, why he did it, and the lasting impact of his disclosures. We'll present both perspectives and let you draw your own conclusions about one of the most controversial figures in modern history. To understand Snowden's actions, we need to understand his background. Edward Snowden was born in North Carolina in 1983. He grew up during the rise of the Internet, becoming deeply interested in computers and technology from a young age. Snowden's family had connections to government service. His grandfather served in the Coast Guard. His father worked for the Coast Guard. This background initially shaped his worldview and career path. Politically, young Snowden held libertarian views, believing strongly in individual freedom and limited government power. He valued privacy and was skeptical of government overreach. Despite lacking a college degree, Snowden's technical skills opened doors in the intelligence community. In 2006, he joined the CIA as a technical specialist. His intelligence career progressed quickly. He worked at the CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia, then received overseas assignments including Geneva, Switzerland. His technical expertise in computer systems and networks made him valuable to intelligence operations. In 2009, Snowden left the CIA and joined private intelligence contractors, first Dell and then Booz Allen Hamilton. These contractors work closely with intelligence agencies, providing technical expertise and support. Through these positions, Snowden gained access to some of America's most classified intelligence programs. He held top-secret clearance with special access to compartmented information, the highest level of security classification. According to Snowden's later accounts, his concerns about surveillance programs grew gradually. He claims he witnessed the scope of government surveillance expanding far beyond what he believed was constitutional or ethical. He describes becoming increasingly troubled by programs that collected information on millions of people who had no connection to terrorism or national security threats. By 2012, Snowden began planning to expose these programs publicly. He carefully gathered documents, copied files, and prepared for what he knew would be a life-changing decision. In May 2013, Snowden requested temporary leave from his contractor position at an NSA facility in Hawaii, claiming he needed treatment for epilepsy. Instead, he flew to Hong Kong with a laptop containing thousands of classified documents. From a Hong Kong hotel room, Snowden contacted journalists Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras, along with the Guardian newspaper. He was ready to reveal what he'd discovered. Starting in June 2013, newspapers began publishing stories based on Snowden's documents. The revelations shocked the world. The first major disclosure revealed PRISM, a program where the NSA collected internet communications from major tech companies. PRISM allowed intelligence agencies to access emails, chat logs, photos, and other data stored on these platforms. The legal authority came from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, but the scope was far broader than most people imagined. Tech companies initially denied providing direct access to their servers. They claimed they only responded to specific legal requests. The documents suggested deeper cooperation, though the exact nature remained disputed. Another program collected metadata from millions of Americans' phone calls. While not recording conversations, the program tracked who called whom, when, and for how long. This metadata can reveal detailed patterns about people's lives, who they talk to, where they are, their daily routines, their social networks. Intelligence agencies argued this information was crucial for tracking terrorist connections. Critics argued that collecting this information on millions of innocent Americans without individual warrants violated Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches. Further documents revealed international surveillance programs. The NSA and British intelligence monitored internet traffic flowing through undersea fiber optic cables. They potentially accessed communications of millions worldwide. Intelligence agencies had allegedly monitored the communications of foreign leaders, including allies like German Chancellor Angela Merkel. These revelations caused diplomatic incidents and damaged international relationships. Some documents suggested intelligence agencies had worked to weaken encryption standards. They had developed methods to bypass security technologies that protect online communications. This revelation particularly troubled privacy advocates and cybersecurity experts. They argued that weakening encryption for intelligence purposes also made everyone more vulnerable to hackers and criminals. X-Keyscore, according to leaked documents, was a system allowing analysts to search vast databases of collected information. It potentially accessed emails, web browsing histories, and online activities. The system's capabilities raised questions about oversight and whether individual analysts had too much power to access private information. Perhaps most striking was the sheer scale. These weren't targeted operations against specific suspects. They were mass collection programs gathering information on millions of people, the vast majority of whom had no connection to national security threats. The revelations showed surveillance capabilities far beyond what most citizens, lawmakers, or even some intelligence officials had understood. Many people view Snowden as a courageous whistleblower who exposed unconstitutional government overreach. Supporters argue the revealed programs violated the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Mass collection of Americans' communications without individual warrants or probable cause represents exactly the kind of government overreach the Constitution prohibits. Before Snowden, these programs operated in complete secrecy. Citizens couldn't challenge them in court because they didn't know they existed. Snowden gave people the information necessary to defend their constitutional rights. In a democracy, citizens should know what their government does in their name. Secret programs that affect millions of people without public knowledge or debate undermine democratic governance. Snowden's supporters argue that exposing these programs was essential for democratic accountability. Citizens can't make informed decisions about security and privacy trade-offs if they don't know what's being traded. Snowden didn't simply dump all documents publicly. He gave them to journalists and asked them to carefully review and redact information that could endanger lives or critical operations. Major newspapers, including The Guardian, The Washington Post, and The New York Times, reviewed documents before publication. They consulted with government officials about potential harms. Snowden has stated he specifically avoided taking documents about military operations or intelligence activities targeting legitimate foreign threats. He focused on programs affecting ordinary citizens. Snowden claims he raised concerns through internal channels before going public, but these concerns were dismissed. Supporters argue he had no choice but to go public when internal whistleblower protections proved inadequate. Without Snowden's disclosures, none of these reforms would have happened. His supporters argue the benefits to privacy rights and democratic accountability outweigh any harms. This recognition from respected institutions suggests many serious, thoughtful people believe his disclosures served the public interest. Critics argue that regardless of his motivations, he broke the law. If everyone who disagreed with government policy could unilaterally disclose secrets, intelligence work would be impossible. Snowden could have reported concerns to the Inspector General, to congressional oversight committees, or through other legal channels without stealing and publicly disclosing classified information. Critics argue he chose the most damaging path rather than pursuing legal alternatives that could have addressed concerns without compromising intelligence capabilities. While some programs affected ordinary citizens, others targeted legitimate foreign intelligence threats. Snowden's blanket disclosures didn't distinguish between problematic domestic surveillance and legitimate foreign intelligence operations. Even if he didn't directly share information, his presence in Russia allowed adversaries to study the documents and understand American intelligence capabilities. Snowden made unilateral decisions about disclosure without the full picture of operational contexts, legal frameworks, or strategic necessities. His subsequent self-promotion and media presence reinforce these suspicions. This long-term presence in an adversarial country undermines his credibility as a principled whistleblower. Regardless of whether you view Snowden as hero or traitor, his impact on privacy, security, and technology is undeniable. The revelations prompted significant reforms. In 2015, Congress passed the USA Freedom Act, ending the bulk collection of Americans' phone records. Courts ruled that some NSA programs had exceeded legal authority. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court faced new scrutiny and transparency requirements. Privacy protections were strengthened, though debates continue about the right balance between security and privacy. Tech companies strengthened encryption after the revelations. Apple, Google, and others implemented end-to-end encryption that even they cannot break. This encryption protects users from both government surveillance and criminal hacking, but it also creates challenges for law enforcement investigating serious crimes. The revelations accelerated the development of privacy-focused technologies and services that prioritize user security. The disclosures damaged diplomatic relationships, particularly with European allies upset about surveillance of their citizens and leaders. International organizations developed stronger data protection standards. The revelations contributed to efforts to localize data storage and limit foreign access to citizens' information, fragmenting the global internet. Perhaps most significantly, Snowden sparked global conversation about privacy in the digital age. People became more aware of surveillance capabilities and more conscious of their digital footprints. The debate about security versus privacy, government transparency versus secrecy, and individual rights versus collective security continues to shape policy discussions. Snowden remains in Russia, where he received permanent residence in 2020. He married his longtime girlfriend and has children. He participates in public debates via video link, writes about privacy and surveillance, and advocates for stronger privacy protections. The U.S. government maintains charges against him under the Espionage Act. If he returns, he faces prosecution and potentially decades in prison. Over a decade later, opinions remain divided. Privacy advocates continue calling for his pardon, arguing he performed a public service. National security officials maintain he damaged intelligence capabilities and broke his oath. This fundamental disagreement reflects broader tensions in democratic societies about security, privacy, transparency, and the proper limits of government power. So, is Edward Snowden a hero or a traitor? The answer depends on what you value most. If you prioritize privacy rights, constitutional protections, and democratic transparency, you might see Snowden as a courageous whistleblower who exposed unconstitutional government overreach at enormous personal cost. If you prioritize national security, legal processes, and institutional stability, you might see him as a traitor who violated his oath, damaged intelligence capabilities, and endangered lives. Perhaps the truth is more complex than either label suggests. Snowden revealed programs that courts later ruled illegal. That suggests his concerns had merit. But he also broke laws and disclosed information that went beyond domestic surveillance concerns. He raised important questions about government power in the digital age, but he answered those questions unilaterally, rather than through democratic processes. He sparked essential debates about privacy and security, but he did so by fleeing to an adversarial country where he's remained for over a decade. What's undeniable is that Snowden changed the conversation. Before 2013, most people didn't think about government surveillance. Now, it's a central concern in technology policy, civil liberties debates, and democratic governance. Whether that change justifies his methods, whether the benefits outweigh the costs, whether he should be pardoned or prosecuted. These questions don't have simple answers. They require weighing competing values: security versus privacy, transparency versus secrecy, individual conscience versus institutional loyalty. Reasonable people examining the same facts reach different conclusions based on which values they prioritize. Edward Snowden's legacy will be debated for decades. Future generations will judge whether he was right to do what he did, whether he did it the right way, and whether the world is better or worse for his actions. For now, the question remains: hero or traitor? The answer is yours to decide.